proceed.
Give me 1 second to get the recording started. Chairman, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the March meeting of the Board of Adjustment. We're conducting this meeting virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our thanks to Max Hamby for his assistance in helping us set this meeting up. This afternoon, we're going to consider an area variance for property at 34 Virginia Avenue, located at the southwest corner of Virginia Avenue and First Street. The homeowner seeks an area variance to permit him to put a 4-foot fence inside the setback required on the side of the yard which faces First Street. I don't know if there are any members of the public watching today, but if you are, thank you for your interest in our work. If you've requested time to speak, we ask that you address only the issues before the board. And by that, I mean the legal criteria for the area variances. Now, today, we don't have a court reporter present. We found out over the weekend that she wasn't going to be able to make it. So if it ever becomes necessary to prepare a transcript of this meeting, she's going to have to work off the tape of our video today. So because of that, please, everyone, keep your voices up and let's try to avoid cross conversation. Speak one at a time. Everyone who chooses to speak here today, members of the public or witnesses, will have to be sworn. And again, I'm going to ask Fred Townsend, our attorney, to swear the witnesses when that becomes necessary. So we can start working our way through today's agenda. The agenda is the call to order and the roll call. So I can see that there's Barry. So we have 4 members here today. I'm here. Randy is here, Barry Brand is here, and Walt Cassell is here. Jan Connessy will not be joining us today due to a death in the family yesterday. Her mother-in-law passed away at age 107 years old. Madam Clerk, I have a question for you. Could you tell us whether the notices for this hearing were properly posted in mail?
The agenda was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on March 15th. It was sent out from the city portal on March 15th. The public notice for case number 0221-01 for the property located at 34 Virginia Avenue was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on February 23rd. The public notice was published in the Cape Gazette on March 2nd and March 5th. Coast Press on March 3rd, and Delaware State News on March 4th and March 5th. Notification specific to this case was mailed out to the property owner addresses within 200 feet of the subject property, and signage was posted on the property. That's all I have, Chairman.
All right, it's appearing that the notice was properly posted and sent, so we're prepared to go forward with this today. Mr. Mitchell, are you there? Mr. Mitchell, I'm trying to.
I am here.
Okay, welcome. We'll be getting to you very shortly. First order of business is to see if there's any general correspondence has been received by the clerk.
No general correspondence has been received. Only one piece of correspondence specific to the case.
Okay, we'll get to that when we get into the case. And next would be, we're at the point where we have to approve the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to see the minutes for the last 2 meetings?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have 2 sets of minutes here. One is for the December 2020 meeting, and one is for the January 2021 meeting. If we've all had a chance to review the minutes of the December 21st meeting, well, first let's see who was there. So I was there, Barry was there, and Randy was there.
I wasn't there for the December meeting.
So Walt, you weren't there. So for Barry, Randy, and I, do we all agree that, is there a motion to adopt those minutes?
Yeah, Barry will make that motion.
Randy, do you want a second?
I will second it, yes.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the December meeting, the minutes are approved. Next, January 2021. I was at that meeting, Barry was there, and Walt was there. So the three of us can vote to approve those minutes. Is there a motion to approve the January 25th minutes?
I'll make the motion.
And Barry will second it.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so the minutes of those two meetings were approved. Is there any old business, Madam Clerk?
There is none.
Okay, that brings us to new business. The new business is this hearing today for the property on Olive Street, Virginia Avenue. Now, this is an area variance, and an area variance, there's four criteria that we have to follow in accordance with the law. The four criteria that we have to weigh are these: the nature of the zone where the property lies, the character and use of the immediate vicinity, whether removal of the restriction on the applicant's property would seriously affect the neighboring properties and their uses, and finally, whether the failure to remove the restriction would create an exceptional practical difficulty for the owner in relation to his efforts to make normal improvements to the property. So what I'd like to do is allow the building inspector to present his report. Then, Mr. Mitchell, we're going to switch over to you and allow you to make your report or give your application. And then we will ask you some questions and there'll be some general discussion on this. So, Mr. Janis, would you take it away, please?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board. It's been a while since I've seen you. Hope you're all well. Today, case number 0221-01, location 34 Virginia Avenue. The applicant / owner in this case is Scott Mitchell of 618 South Alfred Street of Alexandria, Virginia, 22314. The subject of today's meeting is to seek a variance to allow a 4-foot fence to encroach into a required 10-foot side yard setback. The applicant, Scott Mitchell, is requesting a variance to 270-24 building setback lines to allow a 4-foot required fence to encroach the minimum 10-foot setback. The 4-foot fence is required by code because of barrier requirements for the newly constructed pool. The property is located at 34 Virginia Avenue and identified as Sussex tax map number 334-14.13-297 and Rehoboth parcel ID number 2054. The lot is located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Virginia Avenue and 1st Street. It is a typical 50-foot by 100-foot lot with the 50-foot facing Virginia Avenue, where the property derives its addressing from, and is zoned R2. The recently renovated 2-story single-family dwelling has an approximate square footage of 2,800 square feet. Background information. The applicant submitted plans for renovations to the property on December 10th, 2019. The submittal was approved after review on March 13th, 2020 and issued for permit. During the review, the reviewer noted on a submitted survey that the pool fencing needed to be pulled back to the 10-foot setback line because it was over the allowable 42-inch height. I've provided Exhibit A as proof of that document. You can see the markups there that were presented to the applicant at time of permit, of giving the permit out. As part of the application, the pool contractor submitted documentation that acknowledges the required fencing and the location to be installed. Though the contractor was not contractually obligated to the installation of the fence, the contractor is well versed in the city of Rehoboth Beach and has installed numerous pools throughout the community. Exhibit B. So you can see that the pool installer themselves recognized the code and spoke to it basically in their submitted document as Exhibit B. In In an attached document, code enforcement began a violation, case 240, on November 24th, 2020, referring to the fence height and location with a date to comply by December 2nd, 2020. No response was received. A second notice was then sent out on January 20th, 2021, with a comply by date of February 1st, 2021. No reply was received from that second notification. A third and final notice was sent February 4th, 2021, advising that fines were going to be levied at $250 a day, at $250, with a comply date of February 11th, 2021. Code enforcement then received notification that the application for variance was sent. The package for application was received February 10th, 2021. The recommendation is to deny the application for a variance. The applicant should be directed to correct the issue and allow the building inspector to verify compliance of the setback ordinance, both on-site and by submitting a signed and sealed survey showing the corrected fence location. As the property is currently for sale, a failure to act by date should be given. If the applicant fails to comply by the date, a penalty of up to $250 should be imposed until the issue has been resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Janis. If there's, Mr. Mandelis, do you want to add anything at this point, or are you just available for questions if we have any?
Just available for questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mitchell, your turn. You ready?
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Mitchell, could you give us for the record your address?
618 South Alfred Street, Alexandria, Virginia.
Sir, do you affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please continue with your testimony.
But before you do, Mr. Mitchell, I just want to ask you to keep your voice up. I'm having a little trouble hearing you, okay?
Oh, okay. Is this better?
That's better.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Are you ready for me?
We're ready for you.
Please proceed.
Okay, good. We got this permit, I think it was in 2000, I can't remember what Matt said, but 2019 we applied, we might have got it in 2020, and I had a contractor that worked on the house for me through 2020 to ballpark maybe of like, I'm not sure, September of October of 2020. At that point, he was off the job, and there were just some cleanup items to be completed and the fencing. So as I come into Rehoboth to my job at 34 Virginia, I would go by a house on Virginia at the corner of Olive, 32 Olive, and we would also walk by there almost every day when we go to dinner. And I saw that their 4-foot fence around their pool was on the sidewalk. And I said, wow, that's great. It gives them the opportunity to have a bigger yard. In reference to what was said about what was on the plans, that the city required the 4-foot fencing, I don't recall that. I don't work in Rehoboth, so I didn't know those. And there was confusion with my pool person, although she does work a lot in the city. There was confusion over what we could do where. We knew we could have a 6-foot fence behind the house and to the side of the driveway, but in front, what would happen with is if I have a front porch that is actually also storage underneath, and so in order to be able to whoever's there to access that storage, we needed to enclose that in the fence for privacy and for safety. It's for security. So my thought was just that I saw this house, almost every day, two houses from mine that had their 4-foot fence even closer to the sidewalk than mine. And so what I did was I just pulled it back to the point where I thought we could get into our storage underneath for pool and, whatever, beach storage. And so that's where we built it. When the three gentlemen came out from the city to do my final inspections and the pool inspection, my pool contractor was also there at the time. Everything was passed except for the fence. He said this fence is too close to the setback, or it's in the setback, and needs to go back 10 feet. And he said, you're the only thing you can do is either move it or ask for a variance. And I said, good, I'll ask for a variance. When we, as far as the not responding to the notices, I don't even remember getting these notices, because if I'd gotten them, I would have responded to them and said that we're working on a variance. When I did find out that it needed 30 days in advance notice of the January meeting, it was the beginning of January when I found that out. And so then I lost that meeting. So I was going to apply for the February meeting, but then there was no February meeting. So that's when I started, doing research on, what was the fence situation in town and how many people actually had fences in the 10-foot setback. So I just did a 5 or 6 hour ride around town, took pictures and measured, and it looks like, just from my short time looking, I found 12 examples of fences that were at least as tall as mine or taller, that were either on the property line, with 2 feet from the property line, a foot from the property line, 4 feet from the property line. And I sent you all those. I guess you all have the packets of those, because I had to make, I think, 8 or 10 packets. So, it doesn't, I'm not trying to say that it was right, because I didn't know the regulation, but, if I did know the regulation, we would have asked about what we could have done. When I first talked to one of the inspectors on the job site, the idea of line of sight came up. And so before I did anything, I went down to the corner of Virginia and First, which is, I guess it's the northwest corner of my house. And there was no line of sight issue. So, I figured that was just trying to think logistically, that would be a problem. If somebody's pulling out of Virginia and turning right and looking down my side of my yard, if the fence was in their way, that would have been an immediate problem. I knew, I kind of know that from where I work, where I build. And so, that I knew that wasn't a problem. But then when I talked to another inspector, or called this, I didn't call it wasn't the city that I talked to, because I never got the answer when I called, and it was closed because of COVID. So unless somebody came after the job, I really didn't have anybody to talk to. But I did talk to another inspector, possibly one that came out to the job again, and they said the line of sight is not an issue here. It's strictly, needs to be 10 feet off of the sidewalk. At that point, we'd already built it. So then, in order to hopefully satisfy the variance requirements, I just said, well, am I the only one in town that has done this? And so when I looked around, I found out that I wasn't, and so I'm asking for the ability to keep the fence where it is, so I actually have a yard. If I go 10 feet back in my yard's pretty small to begin with, and for what it's worth, there is no line of sight issue. But I know that that's not the critical issue here. So that's why I'm here today, asking for a variance.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. All right, now's the opportunity for members of the board to ask questions of the litigants, and I have a few questions. I'd like to go first, and I'd like to direct my initial questions to Mr. Janis. So, Matt, my understanding is that the 48-foot fence is required under the International Residential Code. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is.
Inch.
Right.
Mhm.
And there's no,
Right.
48 inch, and there's no setback requirements in the residential code. The setback requirements are found in the zoning code. Agreed?
That is correct, sir.
All right, and my understanding is that section 270-24 footnote 2 says that on a corner lot, the side that faces the street, which is not the front, now in this case, that would be First Street, shall have a minimum setback line of 10 feet. Is that right?
That is correct, sir.
All right. So we're going to be treating this fence as if it was a front yard fence then.
Yes, sir.
Now, the tallest fence that can be erected in a front yard, my understanding, is 42 inches. Is that true?
That's correct.
Under 42, section 240-43, a fence can enclose a front yard so long as it is no taller than 42 inches. And that 42-inch high fence may project into or enclose any required front yard to a depth from the street line equal to the required depth of the front yard. Now, I don't know whether that is implicated in this case or not, but just I'd like to make sure. Where do you start the measurement under that provision? At the curb line or from the property line?
You would begin at the property line for that measurement.
Okay, so that's just the standard 10-foot setback then. That's what you're saying? We're
Yes, sir.
dealing with him? All right. Now, we have 3 surveys in this case. Have you had the chance to look at all 3 surveys?
I have, yes.
Okay. And Mr. Mitchell, have you had a chance to see all the surveys in this case?
I've looked at the surveys that I've ordered.
Okay. Is the pool in the same location in all 3 of the surveys?
I'm going to say that it's not because we moved the pool south from the house. When I say we, my pool company did. We talked about where we wanted it and where we could have it, and she moved it closer to my driveway.
All right. Did the pool get moved any closer to First Street, or has it always been the same distance back from First Street?
Gosh, I think it was a lateral move, but that's a relative guess. I think that's what happened, but I can't say that for sure.
All right. So the first survey that we have appears to be the one that's dated September 13th, 2019. Do you see that? That was submitted by the building inspector. Do you see that, Mr. Mitchell?
Unfortunately, let's see. Let me see. I probably don't have that one. I think only got the last one in front of me. I've only got the last one in front of me where my pool is next to the driveway.
Well, you remember.
I believe that the first.
Go ahead.
Okay. I believe the first survey was as much citing a pool on the property as it was a final placement. And so, when we kind of, some more time you spend there and you see what the setbacks are and what you can do with the pool, that's when we decided to, because we just don't have much of a yard anyway. So we said, well, why put it right in the middle of the yard? And that's when we moved it closer to the driveway, so we'd actually try to have some yard.
All right. Well, that survey dated September 13th, 2019, appears to show a 10-foot setback line right at the edge of the pool. There's a 10-foot indication that goes from the property line to the east side of the pool. It seems to butt right up against the pool. All right.
Right. And so it looks like in that case, the survey that I have here, I don't have a scale with me, but it looks like it was off of that 10-foot line. It was moved west a couple of feet.
Okay. Well, the copy that I have, which was submitted by the building inspector, says that it was approved by City of Rehoboth, fence reconstruction dated 3/12/20, with a note, the fence must be pulled back to the 10-foot setback line. Did you get a copy of that?
I'm looking at it right here, and no, because what I show here is where it actually is.
All right. So
This one that I have, that is, oh gosh, I'm trying to see the date. It should be our last one, but the only one I have here just shows the fence where it actually is.
all right. Well, we have in our documents here a survey with some red handwritten notes from, I presume, the building inspector. And I'm going to ask Mr. Janis now. Matt, is that your handwriting on that survey?
Yes, sir, it is. It did not copy very well, but that is my handwriting.
Yeah. And did you convey a copy of that to the property owner or his agent?
Yes, I did provide it to his contractor at the time.
Okay. And that would that have been on or about March 12th, 2020?
It would have been, yes, sir.
Okay. Can you tell me whether the fence was erected on or before March 12th, 2020?
It was not erected at that time.
Okay. Are you telling us that you advised the contractor prior to erection of the fence that the fence had to be set back 10 feet?
Yes, sir.
All right. Back to you, Mr. Mitchell. Did your contractor ever come
Okay.
and tell you that you needed to move the fence?
Sorry. Did you have something to finish?
Do you want to finish, Mr. Mitchell?
Okay.
You have something to say?
Yes. So what I was going to say is that my pool contractor was not contracted to build the fence, I'm not trying to put her in a bad position, but she was unsure of all of the regulations on that. That's what she gave to me, because that's just what I heard. Otherwise, if I would have, if I'd have personally known that, I wouldn't have set myself up to have this meeting and have a variance.
All right. So how far back from the property line does the pool sit at the present moment?
It looks like it's 12.5 feet.
And what survey are you referring to when you tell me that?
Let's see.
That should be the one that.
October 22nd, 2020.
It's also stamped received February 10th.
I got it. So if you move the fence back to the 10-foot mark, you would have 2.5 feet between the edge of the pool and the fence. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now I have another
Actually,
question.
It'd be a little bit less. That'd be a little less than that, because the fence takes up, whatever.
Fred, I see you want to speak. Go ahead.
Right, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that may generate a question for Mr. Janis, because the 2.5 feet, it appears to me, is running to some architectural improvements or something like stonework, other than the edge of the pool, which I think is how it might be measured. And I believe there's a 3-foot walkway requirement around any pool as well that could be implicated by this application.
So if I could say, it looks to me that there's an arrow at the edge of the pool coping, and there's an arrow at the property line. So that would be a true, 2.5 foot difference, less the size of the fence.
Well, if that arrow is running just to the stonework, I don't think that's the measurement we'll need to know. I think that arrow needs to run to the inside line of the pool, but that's subject to Mr. Janis's opinion.
Certainly. Mr. Townsend, to your earlier point, the city of Rehoboth does not have the 3-foot pool requirement around the pool. We do not require that here. It was, I don't know how long ago it was removed from us. I believe probably at the inception of Chapter 206. But unlike Sussex County, we do not have the requirement for the 3-foot sidewalk around the pool.
So that's not
the measurement actually goes to the face of the coping, which when a pool is proposed to be built here in the city, everything that is incorporated with the pool and its construction, be it coping, whatever, equipment, etc., needs to be placed within the setbacks.
I got you. If I may continue. So if the fence got pulled back to the 10-foot setback line, and I'm going to address this to Mr. Janis, if the fence got pulled back to the 10-foot setback line, would the applicant be permitted to build a 6-foot tall fence of solid construction at that point?
You are correct, sir.
All right, so he would be going from, if he wanted to, from a 48-inch fence to, he could build a 6-foot fence, just a couple of feet back, correct?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right. The next,
If I may.
Who's seeking to speak?
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, if I may, where it gets tricky is obviously the barrier requirements for the pool. The city of Rehoboth, allows the 42-inch fence, but then when you introduce the 48-inch fence, that's where, the code kind of talks back and forth to each other. We still, though, maintain anything over that 42 inches needs to be pushed back to the building setback requirements.
Okay. So then Mr. Mitchell submitted a number of pictures relating to a number of properties, which I think his argument is that this rule may be observed in the exception rather than being the rule. So I don't know the story of all these properties, and he hasn't done a complete job of telling us how those fences ended up, how they did on the properties. So I'm not inclined to give those photographs a lot of weight. I don't believe that we're obligated to disregard the rules of the code just because there may be some non-compliant properties throughout the city. But one property stands out in my mind, and that's the property he cited at on Olive Street there, which is just 2 blocks away, and it faces the same street. And he tells me that property, he's got a 50-inch fence right on the sidewalk. Is that correct, Mr. Mitchell?
Let's see. I know it's at least 48 because I didn't bother with anything less than 48. I've got it here. Give me a second. I'll look to it.
I think it's number 8 in your exhibits.
Oh, thanks. Yes, 52 inches over 48, not
Okay.
including the cap.
That's 50 inches. So I'm just a little curious about that one. So, Matt, do you have any idea what happened with that particular property?
I cannot speak to that one myself as I didn't permit it. But if I could speak to the measurements here, the important measurement is the actual screening itself and not the finials on top of the finishing for the fence. We do allow higher finials because there's multiple treatments out there for posts.
And I totally get that. But what but let's say that fence is 48 inches. The fact of the matter is, according to Mr. Mitchell, that fence just 2 or 3 houses down the street from his house has a pool, and the sidewalk, the fence is right on the sidewalk. So it's not, it's within the setback. So had, any idea how that happened, or even when the pool was built?
No, sir, no, not.
Mr. Mitchell, do you have any idea when that pool was built on Olive Street?
You know what? I don't. It's been there for a couple years because I have, vacation in Rehoboth, and we walk by there all the time. And it's been up, I'd say it's been up at least a couple of years, is my guess.
Well,
And that, just to make it clear, that 50 inches was not to the finial, that was to the hard fence itself. The finial
those
is
inches,
a little
that's not a big issue with me, but the issue is,
Oh, no, I'm just saying. I just want to make
Okay.
it clear.
all right. Well, I think I've exhausted my questions. Thank you you guys for answering my questions. Are there any members that have other questions?
Yeah,
Darren?
I have a question. Why do we not see any photographs of the actual as-built fence right now? Why was that not submitted?
Who are you addressing that to?
I guess to Mr. Mitchell.
And I'm sorry, what was the question again?
I was curious as to why we are not seeing any artifacts of the actual fence as built. I can't tell from the blueprints whether we have a 42-inch fence going along the front of the house and at some point kicks up to 48-inch. Only thing we have is the diagram. Can you answer that, please?
Okay. I've got no fencing on the north side of my house or at the northwest corner coming to the front steps of the house. The fencing starts on the I guess on the south side of my steps and just runs along. And I didn't take a picture of that. I guess I could have taken some pictures of that to show, from whatever it's worth, the line of sight issue and what it looks like there.
Okay.
But I didn't. I was I was so busy trying to find other houses. I should have taken a picture of my own, but I did not.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
So does the fence kick up from 42 inches to 48 inches by the pool?
No, it's 40. It's 40. 48. The entire length of the front of the house, and it goes 48 all the way to the back of the house.
Got it.
Where it hits the 6-foot fence. And if I could just mention one thing, when y'all were talking about the setback, and if it goes back to the setback, and it's only 2.5 feet there, it just occurred to me that could be a relative, potentially a dangerous proposition for someone there with a child, and there's a problem on the opposite side of the pool, and that fence is 2.5 feet, which, under calming circumstances, you could negotiate that. But if there was a need to get to the other side of that pool, then I just thought about how that could be a problem.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
From me, Jerry, no.
Randy?
I'm curious, and maybe Mr. Janis can answer this, is how did the city come to the conclusion that a 42-inch fence is fine in the front, but not a 48-inch fence, which is just 6 inches difference? Do you have any idea?
I don't know the logic behind it, but as stated by Chairman Capone, we do have the 42-inch fence requirement when it comes to the front line of properties.
And I think you've indicated that you have no idea, just because you were not involved, why we have all these other fences in town. And I do know, having looked at this, that some of them have been done within the last, certainly within the last 10 years. I'm not sure exactly when. But you have no knowledge about any of them?
So when I discover them, probably most oftentimes is when other applications come in for additional work on those properties. Then I have the ability to check around to make sure the rest of the lot is in compliance. So it would come up at that point, but we don't necessarily go out and actively enforce unless it's new construction.
I could say that the one fence that is
Who's
down at the
speaking?
house in the corner.
Who is speaking now?
I'm sorry, Scott Mitchell. Is it okay that I talk?
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Mitchell.
Okay. I will say that the fence, one of the fences that was over 48 inches, is along the sidewalk on the way to the pond, the lake, and that's on the corner. And that was done relatively recently because my friend lives a house on that same street, and I'm sorry I don't know the name of that street, but you go straight. You potentially just go straight down First Street, I think, and then you run into that lake down there, where there's only that 4 or 5 houses left to go to.
Mr. Mitchell, I got to tell you, it's not particularly helpful for you to be able to tell us this now without providing us photographs or even setback information regarding that particular property. So just like, it would have been helpful to have a picture of your fence, but we're going to do the best.
Oh, no. Okay.
Excuse me?
Oh, because I just heard the question. I just heard the question about when one was built, and I'm just trying to, let you know that I know that was pretty recent because my friend lives one door from it.
All right. Are there any other questions? No questions. Any other comments that anyone would like to make? No. All right. So we're at the point now where we have to act on your variance request. Does anybody have a motion they'd like us to entertain? Well, we're going to have a motion. So the motion could be to approve his request for variance or to deny the request for a variance. I think perhaps there could be something in between. Fred, do you have any?
Just for the record, have we invited anyone who wishes to be heard on this from the public to speak?
We haven't. Ann, is there anybody in the queue?
No public has signed up for it, but you do have a piece of correspondence that needs to be acknowledged.
Thank you. All right, and we'll discuss that now. We did get a letter signed by 2 people who live on Olive Street, Gene Cochran, 45 Olive Avenue, and BAC Cochran, who lives at 36 Olive. The letter reads, to the Board of Adjustment, as residents on Olive Avenue, we would like to express our concerns over the variance for the fence at 34 Virginia Avenue. The fence is a new addition, therefore the company who received the permit from the city should have been aware of the height restrictions. A hardship must be proven. I don't think an incorrect installation fits that category. Therefore, we oppose the variance. Thank you very much for your consideration. That was the only piece of correspondence that was received on this case. So there's nobody who seeks to speak, and we went over the only correspondence. I think we're in a position to entertain a motion now.
Yeah, Jerry, let me give it a try. I'm going to make a motion to uphold the building inspector's report to deny the variance request, for the fence. I can't find anything where this is a true hardship, and I do think there is an impact to the neighborhood. I don't know if that's properly worded, but I would like to uphold Matt Janice's report.
All right. I think we need to avoid the term hardship, though. I think that the way the case is going, the terminology we need to use is exceptional practical difficulty. Okay. That's the standard that we need to use.
Okay.
And if I could add, we're also not judging the position of the building official so much as we are making a determination as to whether the property owner has met the test for an exceptional practical difficulty. So the city doesn't even really have an obligation to express an opinion as to whether or not the applicant has met that test. So I think your motion is to be interpreted as there being a lack of a showing on the part of the applicant that he meets the exceptional practical difficulties test.
Thank you, Fred.
You're welcome.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although, look, we're gonna have to have a voice vote here, one at a time.
Mhm.
Anybody want to go first? I'll go first. I'm going to vote against the variance. I'm going to vote in favor of the motion, but against the variance. I don't think that the applicant has shown exceptional practical difficulty. I think that this is a hardship that was created by either himself or by his contractors. And I don't say that to automatically disqualify from seeking a variance, but I think that this could have been easily corrected had they been at least paying attention to the requests of the building inspector prior to and during the construction of the pool. In addition, some of the neighbors are objected to this. While I have some concerns about the fact that there are apparently non-conforming properties, there may be non-conforming properties in the area and throughout the city. As I said before, I don't think that that is a reason or a basis for us to not follow through on enforcing the terms of the code. So for those reasons, I'm voting against the variance request. And next up, Barry.
Yeah, I'm voting against, for the motion against the variance request. Again, for this items that Mr. Capone stated, as well as I think there was an opportunity prior to construction. I think Mr. Capone said this, where Mr. Mitchell could have contacted the city again, for one final check, but apparently proceeded after submitting all this paperwork, saying where the fence was going to go, and then proceeded without that. So kind of a fault of the contractor here, Mr. Mitchell. So for those reasons, I am voting for the motion and against the variance.
All right, Randy?
I am also going to vote against the variance and support the conclusion that we're supporting the city's approach here, because that is indeed the rule. I'm doing it a little bit reluctantly, but I do think we need to follow the rules, and I would hope that someday we're going to take a look at some of these rules.
Okay. Well,
I'm for the motion, again, voting against the variance request. And for the same reasons that you three mentioned, I feel the applicant was clearly informed by Mr. Janis, and it appears that the requirement was acknowledged, even on what the pool company provided as well. So.
okay. Well, Mr. Mitchell, I'm afraid that your variance request was not approved by the Board of Adjustment. Good luck to you as you bring the property into compliance. So the hearing is concluded. Now, we do have one other topic to discuss today, and that would be we're going to discuss meeting times, the start of the meetings. Is that right, Ann?
That is correct.
Okay. So for a while, it looks like we're going to continue with these virtual meetings, and Jan Conacy has asked if we could push back the start times on the virtual meetings to 1:30. I don't have a problem with that. I don't know whether any of you board members do, or whether it's a problem for the city staffers who would help us out at these meetings. Anybody have a problem with starting the virtual meetings at 1:30?
None.
Okay,
Nope.
seeing that, can I get a motion to change the start of virtual meetings to 1:30?
Let's ask Max first, if Max is on the call.
I have no issue with that.
All right, thanks. Okay,
Is there a motion to change the meeting times to 1:30?
I'll make that motion, 1:30.
Anybody second that?
I'll second it.
Walt second. Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
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 So let's leave that at that point right now. But we need to start thinking about what we're going to do when we come out of the quarantine and the COVID-19 restrictions. The way the bylaws read, it calls for 7 o'clock meeting starts. I personally think that's a little late. I would prefer to start at 5 or even 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But we cross that bridge when we come to it. So let's finish up with the quarantine type hearings, and then we'll go from there.
Any projection, Jerry, on how long we'll stay virtual? Because it's working, I think.
I asked Ann if there's any scuttlebutt when we would go back to real meetings, and she was unaware of it. So I don't know when or if it's going to happen.
It may help with the quorum to be able to continue virtually. I'm currently in California and I'm able to attend.
I'm in Florida.
Well, thank God.
We're in Rehoboth. If you guys enjoy yourselves.
I'm home, and I don't know if you folks could hear my wife. She's on a Zoom conference upstairs, and she's yelling at somebody. But I'll have to tell her about that. So anyway, is there any other business, Ann?
No, there's not.
Jerry, one last question. I'm sorry, I don't know how the city would address it, but in the future, when we come out of COVID, what would happen if we had 1 or 2 people on the board virtually versus in person? We don't have to answer it here, but we should think about it at least.
Well, I actually think that I've heard Mr. Mandelis talk about this very issue, and I'm going to invite him. If you're prepared to answer it now, you could talk about it now.
Sure, happily, Mr. Chair. So the way FOIA currently reads is that elected officials cannot have any meetings virtually in normal non-COVID circumstances. During COVID, they can. The code says in non-COVID circumstances, and this is the state code, bodies such as yours that aren't made up of elected officials, but rather appointed officials, can have some members participate virtually, not telephonically, but virtually. So there has to be video on. But here's the kicker. You have to notice the location that you will be and invite in the interested public. So in California and in Florida, you're gonna have to open your bedroom door and say, have a seat, watch me participate. So not ideal circumstances, but it is allowable so long as you're willing to do that.
It's allowable, but not practical. It sounds
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
And they can fully participate remotely. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions about that? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Get your shots. Stay well. We'll see you. Hope to see you all soon. Okay?
Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.